logs and dealing with overall issues with trucking. Research has shown that the risk of asthma for children living within 246 feet of even a highway increases the asthma symptoms such as wheezing and more use of asthma medication. Children are also more likely to develop asthma when exposed to traffic pollution anywhere near a school. In a national survey, more than 30% of schools were within 1,300 feet of a major highway, and 10% are within 320 feet of a major roadway. This is less than the distance to the road from my house, where all of the trucks would be stationed at. The United States EPA says that diesel particulate matter, or DPM as it's referred to, is likely to be a carcinogen. One of the ways that the Department of Transportation has tried to curb that is to put DPM regen units or filters in their trucks, but that's only on some of the newer models of trucks. So any truck that's older than, I believe it's 2006, does not have the DPM filters on them. For those trucks that do have the DPM modules on them, they are required to regen when the filters become full. Every time that those trucks regen, it takes upwards of 40 minutes to regen, and at that time the truck begins to idle higher. That being said, having multiple trucks, hundreds of trucks sitting behind our houses is going to create a very loud noise. Like was already discussed, we have children all over in our neighborhood that, you know, I have a 4, 6, and 2-year-old that don't sleep well as it is, sitting there listening to trucks regenning all night long. It's not going to help that cause much at all. The next concern that I have is road damage. When you have 80,000 pounds of heavy equipment constantly traveling across these roads, there will be potholes and other incidences that happen, traffic accidents and whatnot. Who's going to pay for repairs of these roads? Who's going to pay to take out the medians? Are we going to put a stoplight in at the intersection of 85th and Broadway where there's already multiple wrecks there causing multiple fatalities in the 8 years that I've lived there? At least once a month I can look out back and see some sort of horrific wreck. Health risks and health impacts. Have there been any assessments that have been completed? Are there going to be any assessments that are completed when they tried to apply for permits? Environmental assessments. You've got diesel tanks that are on the trucks and also below ground. If there's a leak, what kind of groundwater contamination are we going to have? If air conditioning unit ruptures on one of these trucks, the freon that's released into the atmosphere is going to affect the ozone. Antifreeze dripping into the ground. What was already mentioned was that a lot of us have well water in our property. That's going to affect all that. Are there going to be traffic assessments done due to, like I said, the wrecks and all the incidences? Gray water, with all the showers, restrooms, everything that's going to go into a truck stop, is our city wastewater department equipped to handle that kind of stuff? What kind of money is that going to take? And is that going to affect us taxpayers to pay for all of that? That's all I got.
Hello, my name is Justin Wagoner. Good evening, Mayor, council members. First off, thank you for your service on the city council. I just wanted to say that I think Park City is a very well-run city. My family and I have enjoyed living here for the past 6.5 years, and we live in the Saddlebrook subdivision. And I realize a zoning case isn't in front of you tonight, and so, you know, there's no decisions that you're going to be able to make tonight. So I get that, but there are a few comments I wanted to make. First, if this case comes in front of you, I would imagine the applicant, you know, based on what was in the Wichita Eagle article, will try to sway you to vote in favor of it because of the economic development it could contribute. But as you know, and as your legal counsel would certainly advise you, any planning staff, any of your determinations are quasi-judicial in nature about whether the use is reasonable. It's not an economic development decision. This more or less boils down to, is the use right for the location? In this case, I think the answer is a resounding no. Truck stops are not compatible with residential development. You've heard a lot of the comments tonight. There's certainly more additional information that would bear that out. Our subdivision, Saddlebrook, actually half of its border of the rectangle that forms our subdivision actually borders the parcel that's being proposed for this truck stop. And there were some comments by the property owner that he didn't understand why the neighbors would be upset about this because this would be out by the highway, but it's worth noting that this parcel is, the distance between someone's backyard and the parcel that includes I-135 is about 500 feet. There's baseball players that hit home runs that long. It's not that big of a distance to park 75 to 100 semis, to have the buildings associated with that, the roads, setbacks, that kind of stuff. There's just not much room. It really is a stone's throw away. And as all you know, I-135 more or less bisects the 1 mile section between Broadway and Hydraulic. There might be enough room to fit in, as it's zoned currently, residential plus some commercial. There might even be room, let's say that the residential was never there, to have industrial right along the highway plus commercial beside it. You can't fit in all three. You can't adequately put in place a buffer between the industrial use, which is what the truck stop would be, and our residential homes. There's just not enough space. And a core principle within zoning codes around the country, it's really included in your zoning code too, is focusing on transitioning from these higher intensive uses like industrial uses to residential neighborhoods. And the whole idea is that you create a buffer or a transition of sorts so that the impact is not so high on these neighborhoods. Also, I think any approval of a truck stop at this location would also be inconsistent with other large truck stops you'll see in the region around the state of Kansas. For example, the Newell truck stop in Newton. It's near a car dealership and other commercial, no residential's nearby. The Love's truck stop that opened in McPherson approximately 5 years ago. Again, there's no residential near that. Emporia, same thing. I believe South Hutchinson has 1 or 2 truck stops, again, not near residential developments. And I don't think this is by accident. It's because of how impactful they are on surrounding properties. I originally come from north central Kansas. I grew up near Beloit. There's a couple other people who may be here tonight who actually live in our subdivision who also went to Beloit High School. When you come from north central Kansas or central Kansas or even eastern Kansas, you might go down 135. Park City is a gateway city to the Wichita metropolitan area. And I think it would be not the best look for Park City to have a water tower, a truck stop located right by a residential subdivision. I think it would be a bad look for the city. I think it would be a bad first impression for anyone driving through. And really, what I would urge on this is if this ever does come in front of you with a zoning case coming from the Planning Commission, is that, I think that any developer there would have to go through the same process that other truck stops and similar uses, similar industrial type uses would, and not just get a certain location because that's going to work most conveniently for that party, or it's going to be cheapest for them to develop it. As one of your city's residents, I do expect that you'll do things to help out with grow the local economy, economic development. That's hugely important, but not at the expense of harming citizens who live and have families within your city. If this zoning case comes forward, I hope you'll keep in mind one simple but essential question. Does it make sense to locate a truck stop next to homes? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Was that everybody, Mr. Davidson?
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much for coming on and speaking tonight, and we appreciate that. We'll move on to staff reports, and we'll go to our city administrator, Sean Fox. Sean?
Yes, sir. Mayor and council, good evening. Just a couple items to update you on. First of all, census, and census. We're just a few weeks away from this coming to the close as Park City residents the opportunity to be heard and or counted. The census will stop collecting data on September 30th, and to date, Park City's self-response rate is sitting currently at 74.3%. As you're all aware, the census is vitally important into shaping the future of Park City. The data collected helps determine how billions of dollars in federal funds will be distributed for health clinics, school lunch programs, disaster recovery initiatives, and other critical programs and services over the next 10 years. It has been stated numerous times throughout the census that missing just a single home in our community means Park City could miss out on approximately $59,337 in federal funding. For those watching, folks can complete their census online by my2020census.gov or by calling the number 844-330-2020. Item number 2 is our street sweeper. So far, the response to the city's new street sweeper have been very positive, as staff has received several phone calls, all wanting to know when it's going to make an appearance in their neighborhood. Public Works has had it out on the streets virtually every day since they've had it. Now, unfortunately, some of the areas in the community have built up over time and are bad enough to where it has taken them 2 and 3, if not 4 times to go back over to get all of it up the first time. It is a very labor-intensive, in-depth project that could take another 2 to 3 months to complete. And once it is finished, then Public Works will publish a regular schedule, whereas residents should expect to see it in their neighborhood at least once quarterly. Step 1 of the CARES Act process for Sedgwick County is ongoing, which is to say that we've logged into their system and we've registered the city. We're still awaiting some clear guidance as far as what expenditures will or will not be covered. And then finally, Park City has been selected to host as a host city for the Kansas Certified Public Managers course for 2021. CPM is a nationally accredited management and certification program that offers a blended learning approach of classroom hours, online learning, assignments, and requires a capstone project focused on opportunities for cost savings, revenue generation, process improvement, or innovation in the workplace. Classes will meet here in the City Administration's building 2 days a month, January through November, and for Park City hosting, the city will receive a complimentary tuition waiver that we're going to divide up among 2 of our employees that will be in that class. Barring any questions, that's all I have, sir.
Anybody have any questions for Sean? Not seeing any. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion? John?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
George?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to new business item 5, which is considering this reappointment of Kyle Lang to the Stormwater Management Advisory Board. Kyle's with us this evening. We got to hear from him earlier. He's served on this board since the inception of this and is a valued asset of that. Ben?
Sure, I've had the privilege of being on the board as the council liaison over this time. Kyle's been a very valuable member to the Stormwater Management Advisory Board, and so I would move to approve the reappointment of Kyle Lang to the Stormwater Management Advisory Board with a term ending in August of 2022.
Jim?
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Thank you, Kyle, for your service. That brings us to item 6, which is discuss and consider adopting a charter ordinance related to the city's use of generally accepted accounting practices or principles. Doug?
Mayor and council, there is a state statute that you may all recall because we deal with it every year. It requires cities to use generally accepted accounting principles in the preparation of financial statements and reports. But it does have a provision in it that allows cities to waive that requirement on an annual basis by the adoption of a resolution. For as long as I've been here, the city has chosen to do that on an annual basis and has adopted a resolution so that when we do prepare our financial statements and reports, we're not obligated to apply generally accepted accounting principles. This statute is non-uniform, and that allows the city the option to adopt a charter ordinance, which would make the provisions of the statute not apply, and would then allow the city on an annual basis to choose whether or not on its own to apply GAAP principles. It's a relatively short and simple charter ordinance that's in front of you. It reads that it would exempt the city from the provisions of KSA 75-1120A, which is the statute that I was referring to.
As everybody knows, this has been our general practice that we do this annually.
I do have one comment. Yeah, again, I want to stress that the adoption of this charter ordinance doesn't prevent the city any year from making the determination that it wishes to begin, I don't think we do it on a 1 year and then not the next, but to begin using GAAP.
Okay, Brandy?
I'll support this tonight, but I just want to go on record. I think each year when this comes to us, I always make a fuss. I would like to see us go to gap basis accounting process. And like I said, I'll support it tonight because we can change it down the future, but I would really like to see the city go towards gap instead of just on the KMAG.
Okay, Tom?
I was trying to clarify, she's trying to see that we go toward gap,
Yeah.
okay? There's a lot of liability there that you get into, I think, with not opting out of this, isn't there? This is the part where you have to do the inventory on all the stuff, all the assets of the city and.
That would be if we did not opt into this charter ordinance to get us out from that. One of the reasons why we have never done the gap accounting is because of the labor intensive and because of the size of our administration. It would be too tasking for them to be able to complete that, which is why most smaller municipalities don't do that. Are you done, Tom?
Yeah, I was
Brandy?
trying to clarify that.
And that's true, and I agree with that. I mean, we don't have the staff to do it, and it is labor intensive, but once we get there and we are on a gap basis, then going forward, it's just keeping up with it. We've gone to where we've now got a good vehicle inventory replacement, so we're getting good inventory of our streets and our roads, which are things that are needed when we do a gap basis. So I feel like it just makes our financials more accurate if we are on a gap basis. So that's just the only reason I strongly encourage it, is just to make our financials more accurate. Not that they're not accurate now. I'm not saying that at all. They're accurate, but it just makes it more where there's more information. There's more detail there. So, but
Okay. Ben?
Yeah, I go ahead and move to approve charter ordinance number C 41-2020, exempting the city of Park City, Kansas from the provisions of KSA 75-1120A and any amendments thereto relating to the use of generally accepted accounting principles.
Jim?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. Marla, would you call the roll?
John Lanier.
Aye.
George Glover.
Aye.
Ben Sosetta.
Aye.
Melvin Kerr.
Aye.
Mayor Ray Mann.
Aye.
Tom Jones.
Aye.
George Capps.
Aye.
Brandy Bailey.
aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye.
And that ordinance, or charter ordinance passes 9-0. Thank you, Marla. That brings us to item 7, which is discuss and consider a proposed change of zoning district classification from SF20, single-family residential district, to the I1 light industrial district for the property located approximately 1/4 mile north of 53rd Street North and east of Hydraulic. Doug? Or Russ, do you want that one? Sorry.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Russ Avey, Interim Zoning Administrator for the city. I'll go ahead and tackle this one. As you mentioned, this is a newly annexed property, approximately 80 acres. When property is annexed from Sedgwick County into Park City, it retains its county zoning designation for a period of half a year. The applicants chose to file a zoning request for the I-1 Light Industrial District. On July 30th, the Planning Commission recommended approval subject to 6 conditions on a vote of 6-0. So that's what you have before you. The recommendation sits on a foundation of the findings of fact that are contained within your staff report. The zoning regulations spell out a number of factors which go into making a recommendation and then ultimately a decision on land use. You heard Justin Wagoner, Assistant County Counselor, who sits on the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission's staff table. As he mentioned, it's a quasi-judicial decision-making process, which is why we have these 17 factors that we base our decision on. During the course of the public hearing on the 30th, we heard from one adjoining property owner. During that discussion, it seemed that staff had recommended one condition on the preservation of the existing tree rows, which was one of her concerns. The other concern dealt with light trespass in such close proximity to not only the existing industrial uses to the west of her property, but the pending industrial development to the north. Through that discussion with the Planning Commission, we wrote a sixth condition that dealt with lighting standards, setting lighting standards above and beyond what we have in the zoning regulations. That is what's before you. The staff report lists out your 4 options for motions. I will set for any questions, and I will point out that the one neighboring protester is in attendance, as is the agent for the applicant, if there are any supplemental questions that you may all have.
Okay. Is there any questions from the council? Brandy?
I don't have any questions, so I'll make a motion to approve the change of zoning district classification from SF20 Single Family Residential District to the I1 Light Industrial District for property located at north end of 53rd Street North and east of Hydraulic Avenue, subject to the following conditions. 1, the subject property shall be platted prior to obtaining building permits. 2, the city shall withhold the publishing of the zoning ordinance until the plat is recorded. 3, the applicant shall plat a 100-foot building setback along the north, east, and south property lines and a 200-foot building setback along Hydraulic Avenue. 4, the applicant shall plat a 50-foot reserve along the north, east, and south property lines to protect the existing tree row as a landscape buffer. 5, the existing tree rows along the north, east, south property lines shall be maintained in a manner sufficient to provide screening for all residentially zoned properties adjacent to the site. In the event that these tree rows no longer provide adequate screening, the subject property shall be required to install a combination of deciduous and evergreen landscaping equivalent to 1 tree per 20 feet. 6, all exterior lighting sources shall employ cutoff luminaries to minimize light, trespass, and glare, and shall be shielded in the direct light disbursement in a downward direction. The site shall share similar or consistent parking lighting elements, i.e. fixtures, poles, and lamps, and etc., and shall limit the height of light poles to 20 feet, including the base within 200 feet of abutting residential zoned property, and 28 feet, including the base on the remainder of the tract.
And Tom?
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and second. I did not have the sign-in sheet for the agenda item. We have 2 people signed up to speak on that. So Penny, did you want to come up?
I'm Penny Weddle. I live at 2100 East 53rd Street North. Want to thank the mayor and the council for hearing me tonight. I want to say first that because I've read this in the paper, I'm opposed to the casino. It will destroy many of our families. People become addicted to gambling and it destroys their lives. And then the second item I wanted to talk about tonight was to address, I believe it's case number 2020-02. I would like to say I'm opposed to the zone change for this land that borders my property. My family was told when Buckley came in that the industrial zoning would not go past that wall. And some of you were here at that time that you were on the council. This zoning is way past that wall. If this is passed, it will change Park City, I believe, to Industrial Park City. And is that really what we want our city to look like? I don't. This will change the face of our city. It may not be in your backyard right now like it is in mine, but it will be in your children's and your grandchildren's, because it's gonna spread. It's not gonna be limited to this huge building. You will be taking many families' opportunity to live and raise their families here in a safe neighborhood that is close into Wichita. You'll be taking that opportunity away. I'm concerned about, and my son and I have talked to area residents around us, and we're concerned with lighting, noise, rain runoff, semi-traffic 24 hours a day, the wear and tear on the streets from increased semi-traffic. One question I have is, where is their loading and unloading zone going to be? Because I know I'm a neighbor to Buckley and Milltown, and Buckley moved their loading to the other side, so it wouldn't be right by us. Another concern, and this, after talking to the people that lived on Hydraulic, they were very concerned about the eyesore of such a large building, especially for the people that living right across the street. I really think if this passes, which I hope it doesn't, but there needs to be landscaping on that west side with trees, and I'm not sure what all else, but so it looks nice landscaping. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Evan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for the opportunity to share my concerns on the topic of this zoning change. I do not believe this is a time for me to mince words or be bashful at all about my feelings on this matter. I am baffled and continue to be extremely disappointed Park City is even considering this. For insight as to why, on each and every side of this property, all four sides, there is developed residential property with at least one beautiful home on each side. Two of these homes, if passed tonight, will have to deal with the massive industrial building as the main view from their very front porch. For the others, this would be an extension of their backyard. I hope and pray that you will take time before each of your decisions tonight to think of these people and put yourself in their place, to contemplate what your decision would be if that is where you or your children lived. I believe if each of you were honest with yourselves, it would be a very obvious decision. You would not appreciate the people that should be representing you to allow a building of this magnitude right next to where you live. In inquiring about this topic, I've listened to many reasons for why this should be irrelevant to me, none of which I find even slightly satisfying. The buffer, hedgerow, which will have to be maintained, and that will be the responsibility of the industry. That buffer is seasonal only. Between the late fall to early spring, that doesn't block your view at all. Also, what does this do to keep trash this building will produce from infiltrating the surrounding residential properties? Not to mention the noise. Moving on, there are two schools on either side of this property in question tonight. If you draw a line between each of those, this 80 acres, or the entrance to this 80 acres, will fall right in the middle of that line. That's the radius you are dealing with, and you'd be extremely carefully considering. A manufacturing warehouse is going to bring massive amounts of traffic of the biggest vehicles on the road. The inevitable result being tremendous wear on hydraulic and other nearby roads. This will also dramatically increase the danger for any young people on their way to and from school. So why this location? Without any really deep thought, I can instantly suggest 2 to 3 locations that, in my mind, would be a much better fit. How about between the new Atwoods building and McDonald's, or south of the John Deere building? Or even on the west side of I-135 over by Kansas Paving. It begs the question, what is Park City gaining from this? In my mind, this is only further risk to the safety of our young people, more deterioration of our roads, and lower property values. Also, where does it stop? Is the next location of the zoning change across the street from the gated community of Lakewood Hills, which also happens to be just west of another gated community of two beautiful homes? It meets the same criteria of all the excuses I've heard for changing this property zoning. To quote something my family has credited to my great-grandfather, the three most important things when considering the purchase of a home: location, location, location. I've been happy to call Park City my home for the better part of the last 20-plus years. Please do not ruin the wonderful housing areas you represent by being too short-sighted to see all the damage your decision tonight will cause. Please vote no to changing the zoning to light industrial and make me and others here proud to have you as a representative, as a council member for our city. Thank you very much for your time.
Would the applicant like to speak?
Good evening, Phil Meyer with Boffman Company, agent for the applicant. So I'm not going to take a lot of time going over this. Many of the issues that were brought up by both Penny and Evan will be dealt with as we go through the plating process. So if this is approved, the zone change is approved tonight, we will start the plating process. We'll be dealing with traffic on Broadway during that process. We'll be dealing with drainage and concerns that go on there. You have an ordinance for the noise concerns they have. So with that, I think a lot of the issues they're bringing up with will meet the city's requirements, and we'll address those as we go through the plating process. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Does anybody have any questions? No. Russ, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing further.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Marlo, would you call the roll?
John Lanier,
Aye.
George Glover,
Nay.
Ben Saucetta,
Aye.
Melvin Kerr,
Aye.
Tom Jones,
Aye.
George Capps,
Aye.
Brandy Bailey,
Aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye.
And that motion passes 7-1. Thank you. That will bring us to our closing comments, and I'll start with Jim.
Just want to thank everybody for showing up tonight and expressing their concerns. It's always good to hear the community's input, so I have no other further comments.
Brandy?
I have no comments.
George?
I don't have anything.
Tom?
I don't have anything.
Melvin?
I'm good.
Ben?
I do want to say thank you to each person that did come out, echo what Jim said there. Thank you for taking time to come out and address us tonight. We can't always guarantee agreement, but we do appreciate hearing what each person has to say and value that very much, so thank you.
George?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to my grandson, Micah. His birthday was today. Happy birthday, Micah. Also, for those folks who are still in need of school supplies, a lot of our resident kids, I want to give some information out as a resource. There's a back-to-school backpack giveaway with school supplies next Monday, August 31st from 12 to 1 at Evergreen Resource Center, 2700 North Woodlawn. So I will leave the information with the folks here, the employees, to get that information. The phone number is 303-8042. Just keep trust and faith in the Lord. Thank you.
Okay. John?
I have nothing. I would make a motion to adjourn.
And Ben?
Second.
Okay, and we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Thank you.